covering the stories that hit home. This is KCAL 9 News Central at 9.
They are veterans dating back to World War II. Tonight, they're in Southern California to share their experiences. News Central political reporter Dave Bryan joins us live from Altadena with their war stories. Dave.
Well, Sylvia, Lena, you know, in these days of the Iraq War, the war in Afghanistan, then go back to the Persian Gulf War, the world wars seem like they were ancient history. But for today, for the survivors of those wars, American veterans, their experiences are just as crisp and clear as if they happened yesterday. And tonight, we were privileged to hear about that. On the night of Veterans Day 2009, a small crowd gathered in the Altadena Library to hear the stories and the lessons from those who experienced World War II firsthand. A war that started about 70 years ago, long before the attack on Pearl Harbor that pushed the U.S. to get involved. And while war is hardly a barrel of laughs, former combat engineer David Lester, who was there for the famous Battle of the Bulge, talked about the day he was clearing a minefield, crawling on his belly, when 4 German soldiers walked over to him and tried to surrender.
And I didn't have time to take them. I had a job to do. I had to get out there and clear that minefield. So I kept working ahead. I just motioned for them to go on back. Peterson was behind me, just as busy, and he kept motioning to go on back. As far as I know, they're still trying to find a way to surrender.
Claude C. Davis, whose book Wingtips tells his story as a Tuskegee Airman, told me about the day he flew above the clouds on a training mission and became lost and disoriented and wound up landing on a field in Georgia, far from his home base.
When I came out of it, I was 1,500 feet off the ground, but I was right over a cotton field that had already been harvested, and it was long enough for me to come in a PT-19. And I was able to get out of there. The farmers who came around the fence there, around the edge of the perimeter they came out and told me how to get back to Tuskegee because I was in Georgia.
And Jonna Doolittle, granddaughter of the great World War aviator Jimmy Doolittle, told me about her grandfather, who led the first U.S. aerial attack on Japan in World War II, known as the Tokyo Raid.
He was considered the master of the calculated risk. Although he took what was considered outrageous risk, in reality he knew the science behind almost everything he did. The other thing is he led by saying, let's go do it with his men. He was a part of everything that he led, and I think that's a message that our leaders today need to keep in mind.
Yeah, there are lessons in those stories that resonate even today. The 2 gentlemen you saw in that story are both in their 90s, but still as sharp and clear as ever. Jonna Doolittle has written 2 books, one about her father's experiences, but also talking about the impact that her grandfather's experiences, but also talking about the impact that her grandmother had on Jimmy Doolittle. We're live in Altadena. Dave Bryan, News Central.
A lot to learn from them. Thanks, Dave. Some local vets of World War II.